As a child, Ava had always been fascinated by the abandoned house on the outskirts of her hometown of New Orleans. The house had been empty for years, with boarded-up windows and a faded for sale sign in the front yard. Ava had always imagined what it would be like to explore the inside of the house, to uncover its secrets and mysteries. Years later, as an adult, Ava's curiosity got the best of her. Ava's adventurous routine involved exploring abandoned and haunted places, researching the history and myths behind them, and documenting her findings through writing and photography. She would often go on these expeditions alone, braving the dangers of dark and spooky locations, encountering paranormal activity and ghostly apparitions. Despite the risks, she was driven by her curiosity and fascination with the supernatural, always seeking new thrills and discoveries. Through her adventurous routine, Ava developed a reputation as a daring and intrepid explorer, feared by some and admired by others. However, there was one person that always made her feel uneasy, an ugly man who seemed to always be lurking around the abandoned house. Every time Ava passed him, she couldn't shake off the feeling of dread that came over her. One night, armed with a flashlight and a sense of adventure, Ava decided to break into the abandoned house on the outskirts. At first, everything seemed normal. The house was filled with cobwebs and dust, but there was nothing particularly creepy or scary about it. But as Ava ventured further into the house, she started to feel uneasy. It was as if the house was alive, and she was trespassing on its territory. As she made her way to the second floor, Ava heard a faint whispering sound. It was so quiet that she could barely make out the words, but she could tell that it was a human voice. Her heart racing, she followed the sound to a small closet at the end of the hallway. As she opened the closet door, she was hit with a wave of icy air. Inside the closet, there was a small girl, huddled in the corner. The girl was pale and thin, with long, tangled hair and a haunted look in her eyes. Ava tried to talk to the girl, but she didn't respond. Instead, she just stared at Ava with a blank expression, as if she didn't recognize her. Ava felt a sense of dread wash over her, as if she had stumbled upon something she was never meant to see. Suddenly, Ava heard a loud banging sound coming from downstairs. The girl in the closet vanished, and Ava was left alone in the dark, with only her flashlight to guide her. She turned around to see the ugly man standing there, his eyes fixed on her. Ava froze in fear as the man approached her. His breath smelled like alcohol and his hands shook as he reached for her. She tried to push him away, but he was too strong. Just when Ava thought all was lost, she heard a loud banging sound coming from upstairs. The man let go of her and stumbled towards the noise, giving Ava the chance to escape. She ran down the stairs as fast as she could, her heart racing. As she made her way back down the stairs, Ava could feel the house closing in around her, as if it was alive and angry. She knew then that she had made a terrible mistake, and that she would never be able to leave the house alive. Just then, she heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the next room. With trembling hands, Ava pushed open the door and found herself face to face with a horrible ghost. The ghost was the spitting image of the little girl she had seen in the closet, but with dark, sunken eyes and a mouth twisted in a grotesque grin. Ava tried to run, but the ghost seemed to be everywhere at once, blocking her path and grabbing at her with long, skeletal fingers. Ava screamed as the ghost closed in on her, and she felt her heart racing faster and faster. But just when she thought all was lost, a burst of light flooded the room. Ava turned to see the same ugly-looking person standing in the doorway, but this time he was dressed in priestly robes. The person introduced himself as a priest and explained that he had come to the house to perform an exorcism. He had been the only one brave enough to take on the task, as the house was known to be haunted by a powerful and malevolent spirit. As Ava watched the priest begin the exorcism, her heart raced with fear and adrenaline. The battle between the old priest and the malevolent spirit raged on, each unleashing powerful forces that seemed to tear at the fabric of reality. The air crackled with energy, and Ava felt as if she was witnessing a clash between two titans. The ghost's eyes seemed to pierce through her soul with a malevolent energy, and its voice grew deep and guttural, sending chills down her spine. As the exorcism progressed, the ghost began to unleash a torrent of tricks and attacks that left Ava and the priest reeling. Its voice changed from deep and guttural to a high-pitched shriek, making it seem as if multiple spirits were present. The ghost's body contorted and twisted in ways that should have been impossible, and it crawled along the walls and ceiling like a spider. Ava watched in horror as the ghost flung objects across the room with a mere flick of its wrist, and she could feel the temperature in the room drop to freezing levels. She saw the priest begin to struggle as the ghost power seemed to grow stronger by the second. Suddenly, the ghost lashed out at the priest, its long fingers wrapping around his throat with a bone-crushing grip. Ava could hardly believe her eyes as she watched the priest's body convulse with an otherworldly force, as if he was being racked by some unseen demon. The ghost let out a blood-curdling scream, and Ava felt as if the very walls of the room were shaking with its fury. Ava's scream echoed through the room as she watched the priest struggle against the ghost's relentless hold, his face turning a sickening shade of red. She felt helpless and frozen, unable to do anything but watch the horror unfold before her eyes. But the old priest was not deterred, and he stood firm in the face of the ghost's tricks. Just when she thought all hope was lost, the priest began to chant a prayer that Ava had never heard before, and as he did, his eyes began to glow with a bright white light. A bright flash of light filled the room, and Ava had to shield her eyes from the brilliance of it. Ava watched in amazement as the light grew stronger and brighter, and it seemed to wash over the ghost like a cleansing fire. The ghost let out a blood-curdling scream as its body writhed and convulsed, and Ava could see that it was weakening with each passing moment. When the light dissipated, the ghost was gone, and the room was filled with an eerie silence. Ava looked over at the priest, who was slumped on the floor, his breathing shallow but steady. He looked up at her and smiled weakly. "It's over," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The ghost has been vanquished." Ava collapsed to the ground, shaking and crying with relief. As the priest helped her to be on her feet, Ava realized that she had narrowly escaped with her life. She knew then that she would never forget the horrors she had encountered in that abandoned house, and she would never again be tempted to explore a place that was best left alone.